station. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
That's us, WDXE, and it is time for Bulletproof Estate Planning with our friend Stan Pierchoski. And Stan, it's been a little bit since I saw you last. We did play a recorded program last Friday. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and so you had Thanksgiving.
It was, and it was great. I worked out. I had a good 4 days off. I enjoyed. It was very relaxing. I put it to good use. Got some things done. Of course, relaxing to me is staying busy, but it's a different kind of busy.
It's a different kind of busy. That's right. That's right. Have a little time off with family and friends. Enjoy the holiday, and we have gotten through with November. It's December already.
Here we are, December 1st. The recorded version you played yesterday was perfect because it was kind of based on, can Medicaid take the home?
Yeah.
And I'm actually putting together a seminar that's pretty much that topic.
Yeah.
But it's one that people need to hear twice because it's a little bit involved. Once you hear it a second time, it helps sink in a little bit.
Right.
This is WDXE, W287 AA, and W.
Man, that was a fast hour. It's over already.
I've been in a technical whirlwind this morning.
There you go.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So, well, good morning. Good morning. I'm glad you had a good Thanksgiving too, and
we did.
It was good. So, as we move into Christmas coming up, this is December the 1st. My next and last seminar for the year, and probably for a little while around here, is tomorrow. Saturday the 2nd. It's over on the Pulaski Square, right next to my office at the Star Theater. So I'm not getting, I think I have one planned in January, but it's up in Franklin. So the next one here, either in Lawrence County or Giles County, I'm not sure, February, March. It's going to be a couple of months out. So if you want to come to that.
Did you have one here since we were together last?
2 weeks ago, the 18th. We had one. Yeah, we had one. And again, we're doing this one now and so close to the other one just to keep out of the holiday schedule. We want to do things during the holidays. You guys want to do something during the holidays. So there's no reason to try to crowd that. There's lots going on. There's kids shows to go to. There's recitals. There's, and things associated with school. Like I said, it seems like every couple of nights every week people have something planned, and us included. So we just want to keep away from it. So we're going to have it now, early in the month, tomorrow, and then it'll probably be before we're back around here. I don't know, it'll be several months. So if you haven't been to one and you've been thinking about doing it, tomorrow. If you're here in Lawrence County and you want to drive to Pulaski, that's a pretty easy drive. It's 20 minutes. Right on this square is the Star Theater. It's the biggest building with a big dome roof. It's on the southeast corner. My office is right next to it. Of course, if you find the square, you'll find me. Yes. And you'll find the theater. Just come on if you want to come in. You can call and RSVP if you don't mind, because a little later today I'll probably be putting out tables and chairs, so it's ready in the morning.
Absolutely.
So call us at 931-363-7222 to RSVP, and we'll put you on the list. And if you can't commit, I know I heard Alex talking to somebody yesterday on the phone and I heard her say, if you decide you want to come in the morning, and everything's okay, because there was something there, I guess, that was pending, and they didn't know if they could make it or not. And she said, if it turns out you can come, just show up, just walk in. That's okay. When we had the one 2 weeks ago. Yeah. We had a capacity crowd. I used every table that you guys have.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually put out some chairs.
That's awesome.
I actually had to put out some chairs that were not at a table. And I think out of the people we had there, we had something like 15 walk-ins. So that's okay. That's cool. You're welcome to walk in. We'll accommodate you. It's pretty big. Of course, that's the first time I ever almost ran out of room here at your place. I mean, there was still more room, but there was all the chairs.
It was a good full crowd there.
It was, and it was a very inquisitive bunch, and stayed there for a long time with questions. Weather was good. I think the weather will be good tomorrow. It's going to be in the rain today, but I think throughout the day later on it's going to move on. But
okay.
That's one's coming up, and like I said, there won't be another one around here for a while. Now there may be others that you could come to, but I'm pretty sure. I think they told me we had something planned in January, middle or late January, but it was all the way up in Franklin because we get invited up there from time to time.
Yeah.
And but that's a little longer haul. So come to that. So
good deal. Good deal.
Other than that, we had a pretty good week. Like I said, we had a lot of trust signings this week. When we do our signings, we do them in certain weeks, and we had quite a few this week. And I'm a little wore out. Got one more today after I get back, but other than that, Friday will be a little lower key. But on a personal note, yesterday my wife jumped on a plane My daughter is in Miami to help out. She is, I don't know, she's with child, and it's like, it's not even in any day now. It's almost any hour, it seems like. So she got there yesterday. So, and, she's there to help because my daughter, her husband works.
Yes.
And she has a 2-year-old, just turned 2 here last month in November. And so she got her hands full. She has to go into labor. I mean, they got a plan, but now that she's there and on site and ready to help, it's going to be a big help. And of course, when they come back from the hospital, the newborn and a 2-year-old, I mean, it's just, it gives me goosebumps. Gives me goosebumps to think about it. God bless women and their ability to deal with that.
Absolutely.
And it's still, and she's in grandma heaven. She can actually be there for the birth, and she's pretty much on an open-ended ticket, so she's going to be there. And she has the best luck in airports. I mean, when I go to airports, I just sort of concede the fact that the day's going to suck, and I don't know what's going to happen. I'm probably going to hurry up and wait. You know how it is.
Yep.
I'll get delayed or something like that, or a little bag will get lost, or who knows. I just concede it and just figure it'll be that way. She goes to the airport, and she had 2 flights to get in on yesterday. One didn't leave till 8 o'clock at night, didn't get in until 11 in the evening. That's the only one she could get on. I don't know if it was crowded. I can't remember why, but that was all she could get. But there was another one that took off at 10:15. And now she had the reason she waited till yesterday. She had to go up to Murray Regional. She had a procedure to be done. Okay, like an MRI or something. So and that was scheduled like at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
So her plan, she tells me her plan, and I'm thinking I don't want to say anything negative, but I'm kind of thinking to myself, yeah, good luck with that. She says, I'm going to go up there, and she had a cake to deliver too. So she goes up there and she delivers a cake. She goes to the thing, gets the MRI. And she says, I'm going to go drive to the airport and see if I can be there in time for that flight. So she does. And she says, if they have room for it, I'll be able to get on it. I think it was Southwest, and you can do any kind of same-day change or something like that. Sure. So she calls them, and they said, no, sorry, that flight is completely sold out, like Southwest flights usually are.
Yeah.
So she drives up there anyway. And I said, what are you going to do if it's full? She said, well, I guess I'll just have to turn around and come back home. And I thought, okay. Bunch of driving around, and then go back for the 8 o'clock flight. But okay, whatever. She gets up there, and she calls me afterward, and she says, I got there, and they took my bags. And they said, just go to the gate and pray for a cancellation. She said, I got to the gate. She said, I'm telling you right now, I'm already on the plane. I got to the gate, and the gate attendant walked me on pre-boarding. And I thought, I think I'd ask, how the heck did that happen? But I guess I'm not even going to. I don't know. But she would send me a text with her sitting with her ticket and saying, well, "This is a miracle." So she got on there. Now that would never happen to me. It would just never happen to me.
As much as I traveled in a past life, I had good luck for the most part. Didn't really have. The only thing that happened to me one time is they used to have to, when I was carrying my laptop, I had the bag and my laptop in it, and you used to have to get them out. You get the laptop completely out, and they would, look at them all and blah, blah, blah. And it always freaked me out when we did that because I was afraid it was going to happen, and it did. Me and somebody else swapped, and I didn't know it till I got to my destination. I had the wrong laptop. Oh, my God. It just ended up happening that whoever got mine and I had his was in Nashville.
So
it worked out pretty good. He was in that, and we met up and swapped computers again.
Well, bad story, but good ending, I guess.
Yeah,
pretty.
That's the only thing that happened to me that way, like that.
So anyway, a lot of people will be traveling.
Yeah.
People traveled for Thanksgiving. A lot of people will be traveling for Christmas, and people coming to visit. I always recommend to folks that this is a good time to talk about things like planning because you don't do this in a vacuum. You want to include the family.
Sure.
Now, I'm not saying ask them for permission about where you want to leave stuff. I mean, that's up to you, right?
Right.
But I mean, you might want to break the ice with them and let them know, hey, I'm concerned about where my stuff's going to go if something happens to me, so I'm thinking about doing some kind of plan. Will plan or trust plan. Of course, I favor the trust plans, but it's not a bad time to broach the subject, discuss it, see how people feel about that. And there are some other things that people tell me that they do that I think is a wise thing to do, especially people that have a lot of real estate. You're in the real estate business or a lot of real estate in the way of a working farm or something. Yeah. The question should be asked to the children, because if you have that, you kind of want to leave it to your kids, right? I mean, that's the usual. You can leave it. Some people do it something different, but you might want to say something like, like I got 3 kids. One's living in Miami, okay? Yeah. I mean, her husband's job took him there. But if I have the conversation like, okay, I got some acreage. I got like 150 acres. It's like, I would like to leave it in the family.
Yeah.
Like, because it's a pretty common desire. So I would say to them, who's interested in staying here and dealing with this piece of property when I'm gone? Right?
Yeah.
Well, my daughter's like, well, yeah, I'd love to, but I don't know. My husband, wherever his job takes him, don't know.
Right.
I have another son who's an engineer. Right now he's just down in Huntsville. I mean, he would like to, but he's always going to be doing something like that. And I have a third son that's most likely to probably, so I want to know who's going to do what. Now, if one of the three is clearly want to stay and deal with the property, that's going to influence my decision on how to leave it, because I don't know that I want to leave a third of a piece of Tennessee property to my daughter who's not even in Tennessee.
Yeah. It's
kind of a burden for her to have to deal with Tennessee property ownership when she's not even around.
Okay? Yeah. Yeah.
So I might decide to offset that and say, listen, maybe I'll give it to my youngest son, but I'll give my daughter other assets of equal value.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, they all get their third, that kind of thing. So those are not bad questions to ask when it comes to real estate.
Not at all.
Because some folks move here from somewhere else and they say, you know what, this is not the homestead. I don't really care if they sell it and divide the money. As a matter of fact, that'd be my wish. They just sell this house because it has no special meaning to the family.
Right.
Just sell it and divide the money.
Right.
That's another good thing to know. And you can put that kind of stuff right in your trust to do it. And of course, with all trusts, you can always modify them. I always tell people, you can modify your trust. You just have to be alive to do it.
Yes.
Right. There's a deadline, and that's at death. So you can change it. Even our asset protection trusts, which are irrevocable trusts, those things, the only thing you can change is where property goes at death and how it goes. So you can always modify that stuff if the circumstances change. So let's suppose my daughter moves back and they decide, you know what, we want to build in that back field there. It's a perfect building site. We want to live here. I mean, so, if I did something different, I'd change it. I could change my trust to support that. Because, I'll support anybody who wants to go there.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because, you hear about people leaving property that are heirs. And, if you go to your scriptures, there's a thing called the patriarchal family. And that's exactly that.
Yes.
You leave it, typically you leave it to the birthright, to the oldest son who has the birthright.
Right.
And people say, well, that's unfair. Well, it's kind of not, because you're leaving him the birthright, but he's also got the means to take care of everybody. But anyway, it stays in the family generation after generation. And I like that. And it never was in my family. It never was in my wife's family. And I thought, well, these things got to start somewhere, right?
Yes.
So when I purchased my property, we bought it, and then there was an easement on the side of it. And when that fellow wanted to sell, I bought that out so I could get rid of the easement. So I have a nice piece of land that we built the house on. I got some barns. And I'm thoroughly ingrained there, and I'd like to start the tradition of the patriarchal family in my family.
Yeah.
But, what if none of them what if they all have different plans? Let's say they all go somewhere and they'll buy their own house or build their own house. And I grew up there, and that's a great place, but, I'm not really interested in staying actually there. It would be a little disappointing, but I'm not going to force it on them, So those would be good things to know when you're planning what to do with the property.
Absolutely.
Now, around here, we got a lot of income-producing farms, and those are kind of no-brainers. There's usually always somebody that wants to continue on with that. So, because they're doing it now, it just is it's a stream of income, and it's a business, and it's just something that you can leave to your heirs. It just goes uninterrupted, just continues to do whatever it's doing.
Yeah.
So, these holidays are a good time to approach your family and just discuss some of the things you might want to know what they want to know. Even if it's like little things, you might want to say, look, does anybody really want anything in particular that I have? Kind of like a sentimental thing or something like that.
Exactly.
It's not that hard to talk about. We're talking about mortality, of course, but, it's not really that hard. Anyway, good time to do that. So,
planning is the key.
Planning is the key. Think about it ahead of time. There's so much more we can do when we think about it ahead of time.
Right.
And speaking of that, there was a experience I wanted to share.
Okay.
Actually, two. And they kind of go right along with what we were doing in the last couple of weeks. We're talking about getting people eligible and qualifying for TennCare.
Right.
We actually got another approval in this week. Now that I think of it, so
Very good.
It's always a good day when we get the approvals in. It takes a couple of months, right?
Yes.
we have a hurry up and wait. There's all this hurry part, and then we submit the application, and then that's the wait part. You know? And every now and then they'll say, "Well, send us this," and we do. A couple of months go by, and finally we just get a letter, an email and a letter in the mail. It just says, John Doe was approved.
Very good.
So anyway, one thing I want to bring up, and I want to be. It's the kind of thing I think maybe if you find yourself in a situation where you or a loved one is in a facility, a long-term care facility, something that came up that actually concerned me and had to do with the facility and what they suggested to do. And I'm not suggesting any wrongdoing. I'm just maybe a misunderstanding because we deal with so much misinformation. And we had to and let me back up a little bit to paint the picture. Most people that go into long-term care, and I think we talked about this one week, but when they go into long-term care, it's usually from what they call a spell of illness, which is a fall or a sickness where you go to the hospital. And you're in the hospital for 3 days, or what is called 3 midnights. And then they discharge you to a facility to rehabilitate. I mean, that is probably 98% of the way people end up in the facility.
Okay.
That route.
Yes.
But it can be like a family can just say, you know what, we just can't take care of Dad anymore.
Right.
So we're going to put him in a facility.
Right.
It can happen that way. So you don't have this spell of illness and the hospital visit and the rehabilitation. Of course, when you do that rehabilitation routine, you get the Medicare window where Medicare pays for this up to 100 days, and that's a good time for us to do all we have to do, so that you're not paying privately during that time.
Yeah.
But when you just decide it's time to put somebody in there, they're not going there under that Medicare window, and so Medicare's not paying. So you will be private paying from the get-go.
Okay, let me ask about that a little bit.
Sure.
Get a little more clarification about that because that's something new to me right there that we haven't talked about that I remember anyway. So, explain the window?
Okay,
explain the window.
A lot of times I'll tell people Medicare. Okay, we're talking Medicare and Medicaid, right?
Yes.
I can't imagine how anybody can confuse the two. I mean, they're only two letters of the alphabet different, right? But they are very different. Very different on what they pay for. Now, Medicare is insurance, okay? If before you're 65 years old, you got Blue Cross Blue Shield, something, UMR, whatever, pays your insurance, and it acts like insurance. When you turn 65, you get Medicare. Everybody gets Part A. You got to pay something for Part B, and if you want to buy a supplement that pays what Part B doesn't pay for, you buy a supplement, right? So if you fall down and break a leg, or get sick and have to go to the hospital, that is an insurable event. I mean, long-term care, that's not long-term care. And what will happen is if you're there for 3 midnights, 3 days, and let's just take a broken hip, because that's real common. Broken leg, broken hip.
Okay.
And you go and they give you a new hip, or they fix yours. I mean, just however it works out. After a couple of days, they're going to say, look, you need to rehabilitate. You got this new hip, or you've got pins in the old one holding together. You need to learn how to walk again and rehabilitate from this surgery. So it's very expensive to rehabilitate in a hospital, probably thousands of dollars a day. So they send you to a facility, typically a nursing home type facility.
Right.
But you're not going, even though you're in a long-term care facility, you are not there for long-term care. You are there for rehabilitation.
Right.
Big difference. Because usually when I bring that up in my seminars and I say, Medicaid is the only thing that pays for long-term care. Medicare does not. Somebody will jump up like they're sitting on a spring and say, wait a minute, Aunt Gertrude went to the hospital and then they sent her to the nursing home when she was there and Medicare paid every bit of that. Okay, now here's how that works. That's true. But they're paying for this rehabilitation. So there's no expectation whatsoever that you're going to be there for a long term.
Okay.
And the statute says they will pay up to 100 days. Now, a lot of people say, well, she got so many days left in her 100 days. Now, I just want to make it clear, it's off in 100 days, but it's up to them. It's up to Medicare, and they will terminate it for certain reasons.
Yes.
In other words, they will terminate if you go there and you're rehabilitated. And the doctors report, they have to report weekly, I think. If the doctors report and say, Aunt Gertrude's plateaued. The last couple of weeks she had PT and she hasn't gotten any better, and this is as good as she's going to get. They'll terminate because they're not rehabilitating anymore.
Okay.
Or if you refuse PT, they say, hey, you're here for rehab. If you're not going to do it, we're not going to pay. And if you refuse it twice, they'll drop it like a hot rock, right?
Okay.
But it's rehabilitation. And Medicare, the insurance will pay for that up to 100 days.
Okay.
Now, that is how most people end up in long-term care, because when they go to the nursing home and they either don't rehabilitate or can't, and their level of rehabilitation is such that they're going to require continued care.
Yes.
Okay. And they end up staying there after whenever Medicare stops or the 100 days expires, they're going to stay because they need a level of care that requires full skilled facility. Now, so there's this window that's up to 100 days where Medicare is paying.
But this has to be generated by some health event.
That's right. You have to go to the hospital, be there for 3 midnights, they call it, 3 days, and then discharged to the facility for rehabilitation. It's called a spell of illness. And, you can do that. And, if you go back home, okay, of course, long-term care is not an issue then, but if you go back home and you don't do it for a full 60 days and something happens, it all repeats itself. But you just won't do it within 60 days.
Yes. So
6 months later, you fall and break your hip again. It all starts all over again. Now, that's how most people go, and we have this 100-day window. Most people we know that they're probably not going to come back out based on their physical condition, right?
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, and they say, what are we going to do when, because the facility will approach them and say, how are you going to pay? This runs out in 30 days.
Yeah.
How are you going to pay? Because when it runs out, you have to pay.
Yeah. Somebody's got to pay.
And they want to know how. And I don't blame them for knowing that, So when we know that's going to happen, that it's a window we can use to plan for the long-term care cost.
Right.
And we can do so without bleeding to death financially because we're in this window where Medicare is paying.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's ideal. So I'm trying to get back to where I was. Okay, so that's the window. Does that help?
That helped.
Okay.
Yeah, that helped because I was trying to figure out, okay, so that's that window you're talking
and
about.
Medicare. And that is not long-term care. That's right. Rehabilitation.
Okay.
Now, if you had a stroke, you're rehabilitated, but you're still going, you still have some paralysis and you need to stay in the facility after Medicare stops paying.
Right.
Now we're into long-term care.
Right.
Okay. So that's how most people go in. But I said you can go in without that spell of illness, the initiating event. You can just say, look, we just can't take care of him. He needs nursing home care. We kept him home as long as we could,
right.
But either we don't have enough people to do it or we can't afford the in-home nurses or whatever. We have to put him in a facility. So you can just go put somebody in.
Yeah.
Now, the big difference between the two is Medicare's not paying. So the day you put them in, they're going to want a deposit, for the first month, right?
Right.
Because you're putting in and you're having to pay. Now, so the experience I'm relaying is how that began.
Yes.
Okay. So we knew this was going to happen. So we spoke to the facility, and they said they would work with us on timing. So because once he goes in, our goal was once he goes in, we want to file a 10-care application.
Yes.
Because if we file a 10-care application, we get a special status. Okay. And we want to attain that as soon as possible because that makes them pay only their liability, which is just their income. All right. Now, it's a hard thing to plan for because we don't know exactly when he's going to go in. When we talked to him about putting him in, they said, we don't have a bed yet, so we got to wait. And we have certain, we're busily changing his assets from countable to non-countable. Right. And there was one asset that we had left to go that dealt with another financial institution, third-party financial institution. And so we contacted them, and they sent us the surrender forms, and we were going to surrender this account.
Right.
And we were going to convert it as soon as we surrendered it. Well, that takes time, okay? So we got them. They said they mailed the documents. The documents were in the mail or just arriving when all of a sudden we found out a bed was available.
Yes.
So they put him in. And the nursing home approached the patient or through the power of attorney and want to know if we're going to file the application right away. Well, I'm a little bit in a pinch because I can't file it because they're not eligible. I have this resource that will over-resource them.
Right.
As soon as I convert it, they're not over-resourced, and that's when I would file.
Right.
But I can't convert it. I get the paperwork, the surrender work filed, sent in. They scratch it, sniff it, and look it over, and then finally send us a check. And then we take the check and convert it to a Medicaid-compliant annuity, right? So the timing it's impossible to time it because I can't do this until he's in care.
Yes.
Couldn't do it beforehand or would have.
Yeah.
But so we had to wait for he's in care, and that was always the variable. So we were going to get the surrender forms, fill them out, have them ready to fax or email immediately.
Yes.
It happened a little early because they hadn't arrived yet. So anyway, the nursing home suggested that they suggested, well, you'll have to private pay. And of course, we know that. They told us we had to put up 10 days right up front. So we were prepared to do that. But then they said, well, how about we just file a shell application is the term they used. And I want to tell you right now that I kind of know immediately where they were heading. Never heard that term before, but I consider myself pretty savvy with the TennCare rules.
Yes.
And Title 42, the Social Security that works very closely with it.
Yeah.
You know, our Deficit Reduction Act and Catastrophic Illness Act, and nowhere in those thousands of pages is the terminology shell application. And what they're referring to is this. Now, again, I think they're trying to help. Because once you file an application, you get this special status. You don't have to pay the full amount, and you just pay your patient liability. And the reason you only have to pay that is because when you get approved, TennCare goes back to that day and pays the facility. So they get paid. It's just going to be 3 months from now when they finally approve you, they'll go back and pay as of the day you filed the application. Because if you're approved, then they have to take the position that you satisfied that the day you filed the application. They just didn't get around to looking at it for 3 months.
Right.
So, see what I mean? So it all works out in the end. And
Yes.
Now, here's the rub. They're suggesting, they're suggesting filing an application which has a 100% chance of failure, or no chance of success, because he is over-resourced. Now, we have to tell him about everything. You know, we're not sending in an application that hides anything.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not going to send it in. I'm not going to do that. I'm waiting to send in the application where I know he's 200% eligible.
Yes.
I don't ever send one in until I know the answer to the question.
Yes.
But they're saying if we file a shell application, we can put him on private pay right away. We'll hurry up and fill it out. But you have to say, well, what are your assets? And have to list the one we haven't converted yet, right?
Yeah.
It was a pretty big asset. Definitely over-resourced him. And they're going to send it in, and it's an absolute legal assurity that he will be denied for being over-resourced.
Yes.
Now, I'm concerned about doing that, and so concerned that I won't. And I told them, no, you do not have permission to do that. Because, and I know they're trying to help, okay? They're trying to put us in this status.
Yes.
But that's not a good way to do it. So the reason I'm sharing this story is if that comes up to somebody in the facility, don't jump on that right away. It's not a solution. Now, here's why it's not a solution. I just got done saying I consider myself pretty fluent in these rules.
Right.
There is, when you file this application, that's a red letter day in the process because once you file the application, you are considered TennCare application pending. It's a very special status. And what that means is the facility has to treat you at that moment as if you have already been approved by TennCare, which means once you're approved by TennCare, the only thing you have to pay the facility is your patient liability, which is typically your income. So let's say you got $2,000 worth of income every month.
Yeah.
You got a $9,000 bill. When you're approved, your $2,000 still goes to the facility, your income, because they're taking care of you and they get all the income. There's a few things we can take out, but let's just say all the income. And then TennCare pays the facility the other $7,000. So that's how, everybody gets paid. But the moment you file that TennCare application, you're only required to pay your liability, which is at that point they call it the estimated patient liability, which we can pretty much estimate it to the dollar, but it's basically your income. Because they have to treat you as if you're already approved. Now, what happens is, when it's one of my applications, you are approved when we send it. They just haven't done their process with it yet.
Right.
And once they go through their process, it takes them 3 months or more, they'll finally say, okay, you're approved. Now they'll go back and pay the facility. So let's say we do that January 1st.
Okay.
And January, February, March, say April 1st they approve.
Yes.
They're going to go back and pay the facility that $7,000 that's their responsibility for January, February, March.
Right. And
for every month thereafter, as long as that person's living in the nursing home. So all is made whole at that time. It just takes 3 months to get there.
Yes.
And so that's the status they wanted to try to attain with what they're calling a shell application. But the shell application cannot be successful. Now, here's a problem. If you were of a mind that was little devious, you could do. The question comes up: could you do this? Could I just fill out an application, put in numbers, send it in, and get this status pending? Now, TennCare 3 months denies it.
Yeah.
And when you get the denial, you take another 16-page application, fill it out, fill in the numbers, send it in to maintain pending status.
Yes.
And so you're always paying just the liability every time you file one of these applications, right?
Right.
Seems like you shouldn't be able to do that, right?
It does.
It does, and you shouldn't, and you're not. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Because what's known, when they file a shell application, here's something that, being familiar with the statutes, all of this resides on a single word in one of the statutes. And it talks about this pending liability. And it says this pending status
Yes.
that you get when you file the application they'll put you in that. And we will treat you as if you're already approved for the original application. Okay, the heavy emphasis on the word original.
Okay.
Now, I'm playing this out. I never had anybody suggest this to me before, but I knew right away it probably wasn't something I wanted to do.
Yes.
But I'm thinking to myself, okay, if let's just play this out in my head. If we file a shell application, or they do,
Yes.
Then let's say two things can happen now. I either file mine soon, or that one gets denied and then I file mine.
Yes.
I wouldn't do that because I know for a fact that if that one got denied and I filed mine, where do I now have pending status because I just filed an application which was not the original? According to the way I read the statute, my answer would be no. Now, I've seen facilities do that, but technically, it wouldn't be.
Yes.
Now my question is, okay, suppose they file this shell application, and I'm just a little behind trying to get this last asset converted.
Yes.
And I'm behind because I have to wait for the doggone insurance companies. You can plead with them, you can beg them. Sorry, here's our policy, here's the procedure. You'll get it when you get it.
Yes.
So suppose I file my application 2 weeks later, and I say, all right, I want to pull the first one. You can do that. You can pull for it. Well, is it still the original application because I filed it? It didn't go through because I pulled it out. I could make a pretty good argument if I was a 10-care attorney that was the original application.
Yeah.
And so, again, I think they're trying to help. I just don't think they understand it. And so it was I said, no, you do not have permission to do that.
Yes.
We will private pay until we get this in. That was always the plan. We're trying to coordinate it. We're going as fast as I can. It's just the nature of the beast. Because we're not going in during this Medicare window, we're a little bit disadvantaged, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So
interesting.
And it's just like, last week when you played that recording of the time we talked about the home.
Yeah.
And a week or two before that was when we talked about that. That is another level of misinformation, and that is when you go to a facility, they will say your home is protected.
Yeah.
It is not protected. It is a deferral.
Yes.
They will get the home.
Yes.
Okay? And again, a lot of times folks will say, so and so's never going home, so you don't want to put on the application an intent to return home. It's funny because when you look at these applications, you have to declare an intent to return home.
Yeah.
If you have a home.
Yeah.
I know you may look at that and say, there is no way Aunt Gertrude's ever coming home. It's just no possible way.
Yeah.
She has a completely disability, paralyzing stroke, and there's no hope of her ever coming home.
Yes.
We still declare an intent home. Why? Because it is an indicia of this concept that the house is considered exempt.
Okay.
And exempt does not mean protected. It means exempt. There's a legal difference between the two. If the home is exempt, that means they're not going to consider it in the eligibility analysis.
Okay.
Right? It's a countable asset. It's available for the cost of care, but they're going to say it's not. We're going to consider it not available for cost of care now.
Yes.
But it will be in what's called a state recovery after death.
Yes.
So when they say it's protected, I don't like that terminology. It is a kicking the can down the road. They're going to get that house. They're just not going to take it now. So,
I've seen this happen.
Yeah. And so it's the estate recovery thing. So again, I think they're trying to help. And they say, look, you're okay. Your house is protected.
Yeah.
But they don't quite understand because the nursing home is not going to deal much with estate recovery. Somebody dies. That's the end of the person being a patient there.
Right.
The estate now goes through estate recovery. I can't imagine the nursing facility having anything to do with that other than if they have a claim on the estate. You know what I mean? But and I think that it's a misunderstanding. And so it's best to know that. So if somebody comes in and says, yeah, we just exempted the home, it's like, well, they're going to get it, don't you? Well, no. I mean, we got people that are living there and plan to live there. Well, you're going to get a letter someday after death, and that home is now in jeopardy.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah.
Again, the whole thing is this concept of misinformation, and I'm trying to clear that up. And so hopefully I was delicate enough that I'm not chastising anybody. I do believe the intent is there to be helpful.
Yeah.
But sometimes sometimes it's like my wife says, stay in your lane. If you can't give good advice, probably best not to give it at all. Or divert it to where somebody that can because that's a fine point. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree 100%.
That has a devastating result.
Yeah.
Could have. So.
Yeah. Well, I've learned a lot just listening to you and understanding that, like we said at the beginning of this program, planning is key, and having someone like yourself who understands the system and understands how to use the laws that are in existence. You're not doing anything illegal. You're doing exactly what is called for to protect the assets of your clients.
Yeah, and these things are in the law that are there for us to be advantaged.
Yeah.
They're not there. They're not there, and it's a loophole. It's not a loophole. It's ways to advantage the patient.
And the nursing home receives all they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Nobody's cheating anybody out of anything.
No,
And,
not at all.
And you're protecting the assets of a family and an estate, and the heirs of an individual who has made these kind of plans. That's the key of this thing.
I often tell folks when I meet them that there's no scenario where the facility doesn't get paid.
Right, exactly.
Now, it may be delayed 3 months, like I just said. Then they come back and pay from the date of application. Now, and you might say, well, that's kind of unfair and inconvenient to the home. Well, here's the thing with that. When you agree to take Medicaid patients or TennCare patients in your facility, you agree to that.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise to them.
Yeah.
And in the long run, it all pans out.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to loop back around to something that we talked about early on in our conversations that has kind of just been in the back of my mind about how this whole system works a little bit. Because in our working lives, those of us who are clocking in and clocking out, and we're paying our taxes and we're paying our fees, we're already paying into this system.
That's correct.
It's not and it's a federal system.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of give some detail and background into that? Because I had a guy tell me one time that, well, look, if you go to the nursing home and they provide all this care, then they deserve, the TennCare deserves, and TennCare's paid for this all this time, then they deserve to get the house and this, that, and the other. But you made some points early on in our conversation that we've already been paying. And and we're paying into the system as we work. So I'd like you to elaborate on that just a little bit.
And I get that from time to time. And before we launch into that,
Sure.
we're around the middle of the bottom half of the hour. I just want to mention, this is a call in if you want to call in.
Oh, that's right.
Let me give a number, 931-766-9393, if I remembered it. Yeah,
that is correct.
And, if you have a question, chime in, because
Sure.
it is an interactive show. And
Sure.
I didn't mention that in the beginning, and I don't know why I always forget to, but anyway. Let's talk about that. There's this concept that folks have, kind of a morality issue.
Yes.
I feel like if I go to a nursing home or someone goes and we rack up a bill, I feel an obligation to pay my bills. I always pay my debts.
Yes.
And I get that. That's great. I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. If I have a debt, I pay it. I don't like to have debt, but when I do, I take care of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a magnanimous character. I really do. And so, but here's the thing. Before you jump to the conclusion that I would say, let's stop and think about this. Do we owe this debt first? If we owe it, then we pay it, right?
Yes.
I would never recommend anybody not pay an owed debt.
Right.
But do we really owe it yet? So let's think about that. So we have this system, and it's paid for and taken out of your money in a couple of different ways. It's taken out through Title 42, which is our Social Security, is part and parcel with TennCare. Or Medicaid.
Okay.
I mean, they are interwoven so much. You got to know them both, because a lot of the money that your Social Security goes to that, to the care. Now, the Medicaid money that gets collected gets distributed to the states, and the TennCare system, the medical expenses that you get deducted from your state stuff that gets deducted goes to TennCare, because TennCare is our version of Medicaid.
Yes.
Every state has their own version.
Okay.
And so, it's one of the second, medical and stuff is the second line item thing. Most people get things deducted for in their taxes if they're clocking in and getting a paycheck or paying quarterly taxes. Now, how that actually works, I'm not a tax attorney. I mean, I know it's there. I know we pay for it. So we've been paying into it, and the reason. And now let's say, well, why are we paying into it? Well, when we enacted Medicaid and Medicare, they're like involuntary programs. I don't remember getting a letter saying, "Hey, do you want to participate in this?"
Right.
And no, you don't. The legislature or the Congress of the United States enacts it, says we're going to deduct this is how we're going to pay for it.
Right.
We're going to pay for it several ways. This state recovery I told you about is one of them, and we're going to pay for it up front in payroll taxes and whatever.
Right.
And so you pay for it. Now, Our courts, Tennessee, and I'm going to talk about just about TennCare. I assume it's the same in other states, but this is, we're here in Tennessee, so let's talk about what our Supreme Court has said about TennCare.
Okay.
Because, I'm sorry, I took a swig of coffee. Anyway, if it's not a welfare program, so if somebody says, hey, that's welfare and I don't really want to apply for welfare, it's not.
No.
There is a form of TennCare that's welfare, but I don't even deal with that. That's when you have somebody who's born disabled or cannot hold a job, the SSI. SSI, Supplemental Security Income, used to be called welfare.
Yeah.
And so that's what they call it now, SSI. That's a program TennCare has a version of that, but I don't even deal with that. You know, I mean, I deal with long-term care TennCare.
Yeah.
And that is not. It's available. You just have to be eligible for it. If you're eligible, you get it.
Right.
Now, when people have that concern, our courts have said that TennCare, the benefits, is an entitlement. So what does an entitlement mean? Well, it's not as high as a right. And it's not even, so you have natural rights, and it's not even as high as a statutory right. But it's about the next thing below the list. It's pretty high up there.
Yeah.
You are entitled to it, and you are entitled to the services because you are an involuntary participant. Yeah. They cannot make you be an involuntary participant and then not make any benefit to you.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes it sure seems that way. They say, well, we take these payroll taxes out. Well, what do you do with those? Oh, well, we fix the roads, and we fix the bridges, and we pay for hospitals, and we do. You're thinking, well, it doesn't
do a lot of things.
Doesn't seem like I get much for my money, but it's there.
Yeah.
So, the Supreme Court said you're entitled to this, and if you're entitled to it, it means you got it coming. You got it coming because you've paid for it.
Right.
So the question is, do we really owe it if we've been paying for it already? Now, not everybody goes into long-term care. So if you don't go into long-term care, you've been paying for it, but you never have the opportunity to have it pay for you.
Right.
Kind of like Social Security. I mean, you pay Social Security for umpteen years, and then maybe you just stroke out and they're gone, or you never collect, or you've only collected for a short period of time.
Right.
So, they all work that way, and you may get some may get a lot paid out to them, and some very little.
Yes.
So it's not proportional that way at all.
That's correct.
So it's not you don't have any equity in the system, so it's not based on what you put into it. Like every year you get that Social Security letter that shows the last 20 years how much you put into the system, and you look at that and say, "Holy smokes!"
Yeah.
I'd love to have a check for that. And you say, "Well, how come my payments every month is this? Because I won't get all that back." Right. Well, you're not going to get it back. It's not based on what you put in.
Yeah.
It's a pool, right?
Yeah.
It's close to one of. Well, I won't go there. It's kind of according to the needs. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
So this is the same way. So you've paid into it, and our courts have said you're entitled to it. Now, the only glitch to being entitled to it is you still have to qualify.
Yes.
Be eligible. And so that, so they're not saying, hey, if you got a bunch of money, you can still get TennCare. They're saying you can still get TennCare. You just have to be eligible. So that's where we come in. It's like you can still have a bunch of money, and we're going to manipulate it and change it from countable to non-countable and keep it and make you eligible under the rules. And the rules allow for all that. So, again, if you can't get over the moral part of it, I mean, I get it. And if you can't, you can't. I mean, you have to do what's right for you. Yeah. But I'm saying let's, be open-minded, at least up front, and say, well, why should I have to pay again if I need to go there? Why should I have to pay
what went
again?
over my head, or what went by me, is I didn't realize that some of my taxes, Social Security money, I didn't realize that any of that was going toward Medicare.
Medicare certainly.
Medicaid.
Yeah, Medicaid, yes.
Medicaid.
Yes, they're.
I didn't realize any of my working labor and all the taxes and stuff was going toward that as I worked. I thought it was something that kicked in when I needed it, and then they said, "Well, you got to, we're going to collect from your assets."
It does go in now.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, I'm not an expert on exactly where that gets taken out. There's a lot of places stuff goes. When you pay taxes, a lot of places it goes.
Yeah, it's divided into a big pie.
Yeah, that's right. And the government decides where it goes. But you end up, it's fun. When you think about it, the program must be funded.
Yeah.
They're not going to do anything for free. Yeah. It's got to be paid for. And of course, they have to contract out. The government they don't come take care of you.
Well, the government doesn't pay for anything that they haven't taken from us somewhere.
That's exactly right. I mean, the government theoretically is funded by the people.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, so it has to be paid for. And so they have these means to pay. Now, like I said, but then they turn around and say, all right, here's things you can do to mitigate or avoid paying for it altogether.
No.
And like I said, it's not a loophole. This is offered to us.
Yeah.
The problem is it's not all well known. And I guess, like anything else, they kind of don't like you to know about it.
Yeah.
So you don't use it. I mean, let's face it, when we get a TennCare app, when we get a job to get somebody eligible, I know right off the bat that we're trying to get them to pay as much as they can pay.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get us to pay. They're trying to get us to pay, and them pay as little as they can pay.
Right.
It's the name of the game. It's an
Right.
little adversarial type system.
Well, the phone's ringing. It may be a question for us. Sometimes it is. Let's see what we've got here. Hey, good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Yeah, what if you already give your farm and stuff to your kids over 7, 8 years ago? Can they still take it?
Good question.
Can you hear us on the radio? I'm going to hang up with you. Let him answer on the air, okay?
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, good question. He's talking about what if you already gave your farm away?
Yes.
Now, if you give your farm away, that's a gift.
Yes.
It's an uncompensated gift. Now, I'm going to give you the long answer because I hate giving yes or no's. But the answer, let me give you the short answer. If you're listening and you can't make me lose reception, it's okay. You're good. You're golden. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
But here's why: if you give property to your kids, you can do that.
Yeah.
But when you give it to them, it's a non-countable asset to you. Because once you give it to your kids, it's no longer available for cost of care to you.
Right.
Now, the question is kind of, can they come and take it from your kids? The answer is no. What they can do is punish you for giving it away, remember?
Yes.
And that's that 5-year look-back rule that they can do a penalty period for you.
Right.
So they can never take it. So the minute you give it to them, or the minute you put it into a trust, because you've given it to the trust, you have turned it from a countable asset to a non-countable asset. So it's protected. They can never get to the property.
Right.
But if you make it non-countable by giving it away, like to your kids,
Yeah.
what they can do for the next 60 months is punish you for giving it away because you had an asset that you artificially impoverished yourself by giving it away.
Right.
And the presumption is you did it so they can't get at it, right? Now, the gentleman that called said it was 7 or 8 years ago. Now, their jurisdiction is to look back 60 months, okay? So let's say that gentleman goes into a nursing home tomorrow and files his application tomorrow.
Yeah.
He's going to give them the right to look into his financial history for 60 months, 5 years.
Yeah.
And they are not going to see the transfer of that property to his kids. So he's golden, he's home free. That not only can they not get the property, which they couldn't get the day he gave it away, 7 or 8 years ago, but now they can't even punish him for giving it away.
Right.
Because it's beyond the jurisdictional limit of 5 years. Right. So that's the goal. Now, I think the little bit better goal is to put it in a trust that we can control. So in case something does happen in those first 5 years, we can still get at that property.
Yes.
Once you give it to your kid and they borrow a bunch of money and build their house on it and have a lot of sweat equity, it's not coming back. I mean, the kid might give it back to you, but if you have to, but you wouldn't want that to happen, really.
Right.
So, but it works the same. It doesn't matter who you give it away to. You give it to a trust. You give it to your kids.
Right.
You sell it super cheap.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But again, what he's done, he's golden. He's passed the 5 years, and that's the way to do it. But when you do that, it's a divest and wait. Can you stay out of the nursing home for 5 years? I don't know. I hope so.
You would be proud of me. I've listened to you close enough that I probably could have answered that question.
Very good. Maybe I should have let you. Listen, as we're coming winding down, I wanted to cover one other topic I think I can do quickly.
Yes.
Right along the lines of this, we were talking about this concept of when you file your TennCare application and you fax it in, you are TennCare application pending. That's a special status, right?
Yes.
And it takes on an average 3 months. Sometimes it takes 4. Sometimes not often, much sooner than that. But
yes.
The question has come up. This has happened a couple of times, but the question come up: what happens if the applicant passes away during the pendency? And we haven't got to the point where they say approved.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the example I'm going to say is we got 2 months into this, and they passed away. We haven't got approval yet.
Yes.
Question is, what happens? Well, we just throw in the towel and say, sorry, we tried to do all this, it didn't work. Well, no, we're going to continue with the application.
Yes.
And the TennCare will have to continue with it.
Yes.
We'll let them know the person passed away.
Yes.
But we're going to say we want to continue with the process. So they do. And if they grant approval, which they will if it's one of mine,
yes,
they'll grant approval, and here's why we do it. So the person's been in the home for 2 months during pending, and then they passed away, right?
Yeah.
So for 2 months, they've been paying the patient estimated liability, which is just their income.
Yes.
If you just throw in the towel and say, sorry, Aunt Gertrude passed away, that's it, just forget, don't worry about the application anymore, just throw it in the trash, and she's gone.
Yeah.
Well, the nursing home is going to want paid for those 2 months, right?
Right.
TennCare's not going to pay it because they don't have an obligation. So we want to continue with approval, and they'll grant it. When they do, they will go back and pay from the day of application to the day of death. And so now we've saved the family that money for the time they were, because remember, they're still in there.
Yes.
You got to always keep in the back of your head is this delay that's created by the bureaucracy.
Yes.
So we don't want to throw in the towel. We want to continue with approval.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so they may ask questions and say, "Can you send us some updated bank records?" And it's like, well, what's the point? Well, she's passed away. Why are we doing all this? Well, that's why. It's important we do it.
Yeah.
We're not being unsympathetic to the passing away of a family member.
Well,
we're trying to finish. Yeah. We're getting to the only goal that's left, and that is get them to pay for the time they were in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, and like you've said, the nursing home deserves to be paid.
Yeah.
They perform the service, and that's how that would take place.
And if you don't let go of this, if you don't continue with it, you'll have to pay it. So,
Right.
like I said, there's no scenario where they won't get paid. The question is who's going to pay them.
Right.
TennCare, which you have an entitlement to, or the deceased,
Right.
has an absolute entitlement to that.
Yes.
Or you at private pay, which is going to be somewhat of a burden to you,
Interesting.
depending on your financial situation. So.
That's very interesting.
All right,
Very
well, I
good
guess
stuff.
we're getting close. So let me.
Good stuff.
I
Yeah,
know,
we've got
a few minutes.
3-4 minutes left.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because that happens.
Yeah.
It happens. I
Yeah.
mean, most folks are of advanced years and have some issues, and it just depends on why you're there.
Yeah, and you're planning by swapping subjects just a little bit, but you're planning your seminar tomorrow.
That's right. I wanted to touch on that again. The seminar is tomorrow, which is Saturday, and we do Saturday seminars at 10 o'clock at the Star Theater, located on the square in beautiful downtown Pulaski. Actually, the Star Theater is right next to my office on the southeast corner.
Yes.
You can't miss it, really. But come on to that thing. If you can RSVP, that's great. We like a head count. But if you can't, or you can't commit till tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning, just come on anyway. It's not a very informal. When I say RSVP, it's maybe that's more for too formal.
Now you're starting at 10, right?
Starts at 10. And
10 o'clock.
I typically like to get going right at 10. I may wait till 3 or 5 after, simply because people call and say, I'm on my way, I'm running late. But I don't, I try to hit the ground running at 10.
Yeah.
And it's nonstop action for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Now, don't worry, I will have your attention completely captivated. I can tell by looking at folks, nobody looks antsy.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of information. Come with a willingness to just hear stuff you may not have heard before.
Yeah.
But come with a hopeful thought process, because that's what all this is. There are things we can do. We're going to touch on some of them. Don't feel like we are just SOL. We can't do anything. If we go in the nursing home, they're just going to get it all. Not the case. That's what we do at Pierchoski State Law and Pierchoski Elder Law. And we talk about it at the seminar. Now, it's only an hour or so discussion, so we just kind of hit the main topics. But it's enough to get, salt the mind, so to speak, and get your brain, get your process. So you can look at what we talk about and think, gee, this one thing you talked about fits my circumstances perfectly. So let's talk more about that.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to come to it and you have a question, if you have a question now, bring it. If you develop one during the presentation, we have a question and answer at the end. My favorite part, because I like to hear, because it tells me where everybody's at, what they're thinking about, what their concerns are. I stay till the last question's answered. I'll be the last one out. For 2 reasons. One, I want to make sure your question's going to get answered, and 2, I got the key. So, that's right. But yeah, we'll have something. Miss Tammy's not here. I told you she's in Grandma Heaven down in Florida. So I'll probably, I'm sorry, I'll probably take the easy route and buy some donuts. She usually makes some stuff that's really good, but I can't make stuff like that. But we'll have some light refreshments there for you. But yeah, come to it at 10 o'clock. Or give my office a call at 931-363-7222. And for the guy that called me and said I say my phone number only once and I say it too fast, 931-363-7222. Or you can go to my website, estateplanstand.com, and you can RSVP from there, or call me, or email me, or see my calendar.
Very good. As always, my friend. Enjoyed it. Good, informative information. And it's never a bad thing to plan ahead.
No, it sure isn't.
Especially regarding your estate.
That's right.
Thank you, buddy.
We'll see you in a week.
37 FD Lawrenceburg. Broadcast services of Prospect Communications.
This is a Fox News alert.